and welcome. My name is Philip, and today we're going to be talking about what a computer actually is. To start it off, there are three main form factors of a computer. The first one being a desktop. Now, this is the type of computer that you may have on your desk and then place your monitor above it or on top of it. The second one being a tower model. That's the one that either sits next to you on the desk or on the floor. Then we have the third, who is known as SFF, or small form factor. It may also be called mini ITX. Now, the parts inside of the computer that we're going to talk about are the motherboard, the CPU, the GPU, RAM, storage, and I/O. And speaking about storage, there are four that we're going to touch upon today, and that is HDD, SSD, cloud, and USB flash drive. But starting with the motherboard. Now, the motherboard is the central piece of a computer that makes the communication between the different parts possible thanks to the chipset. It comes in different sizes, depending if it's an ATX or eATX, which stands for extended ATX, ITX, and so on and so forth. Now, it's based on a standard called PCI. There were another standard before, but we don't talk about that. Good. PCI stands for Peripheral Component Interconnect. It's on the motherboard where you connect all the other parts, the CPU, GPU, RAM, etc., etc. Now, it can be compared to our heart or our nerve system, which handles the communication between all our body parts. But moving on to the Central Processing Unit, or the CPU. There are the two biggest manufacturers in the CPU market is Intel and AMD. Now, Intel is the bigger one, which they hold about 66% of the market last time I checked. Now, that was a couple of months ago, so that can have changed. I'm not sure. So the CPU is, as its name may reveal, it's the part that does all the processing of all the data, which could be compared to a brain, for instance. Looking at the GPU, or Graphical Processing Unit, it looks kind of like this and connects to the motherboard's PCIe slot. It's the part that processes the graphical data and sends it to either a monitor or a TV or projector or whatever you have. Usually it's one of those three. Now, it usually has an HDMI and a DisplayPort connection. Older versions may also have VGA or DVI. There are newer versions that also has VGA and DVI, but if you're looking at the biggest market, which is probably the gaming community, a lot of younger gamers don't even know what a VGA or DVI connection is. Anyway, the RAM, or random access memory, is a stick, and this stick holds the data that the CPU is working with. Now, it's crazy fast compared to a hard drive, for instance, but when the RAM is full, it can write data that's not actively being worked with in something called a page file. The page file is stored on the secondary memory, which is the hard drive or hard disk drive, which we're going to talk a little bit about now. Now, classic HDDs are also referred to as mechanical drives. They are constructed with spinning disks that are being written on, and since the disks can easily be damaged, they are sealed inside to be kept away from dust and well, you shouldn't have water near a computer anyways, but etc. They can contain a whack load of storage, but generally speaking they are kinda slow compared to other drives. But this makes them good for situations where you need a lot of storage, but not fast storage. They can, however, be put in a RAID, which stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks, which basically means that the disks are working together as one. What data are written on which disks depend on what type of RAID you're using. We'll cover that more in another video, right? Good. But apart from this, they are really cheap compared to SSD or solid-state drives. These kind of drives does not contain any rotating disks. Instead, they're using flash storage. Now, these kind of disks, they don't contain any rotating disks. Instead, they're using flash storage. They are more resistant to physical shock and dust than a traditional HDD. They come in different shapes and with different connection types. The one on the far left, that's a classic 2.5-inch form factor, which has a SATA connector, while the other ones, all three of them, are M.2 disks, which is a form factor specification for internally mounted SSDs. Now, M.2 disks can look a bit different. They support both SATA, PCIe, and USB interface. Cloud storage, also known as the cloud, it's just someone else's server. Examples of cloud storage is, Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive. There are a lot of them. Now, the cloud storage can be described as an interface to access your storage that are located at, for instance, Google Storage or Microsoft Storage, or their storage servers, to be more precise. So just because you have all of your important files and photos in the cloud, don't forget to take regular backups of them, because the cloud is not a backup. If their server goes down, so may your files that you've kept. But speaking of backup, USB flash drives are not a device made for them or made to place them on. They are, however, a simple way to move local files from one device to another. Or if you want to store files that you want to be able to access on multiple different computers, but you don't want to place them on someone else's hardware. Looking to myself, I pretty much only use USB flash drives when I want to install a new operating system on a piece of hardware, for instance a computer or a server. Or if I have files locally that I for some unknown reason can't put in the cloud, like install files or very large video files, and I want to do a clean install of the operating system, then I can also use a USB flash drive to temporarily store files while I reinstall the computer or server, if it's more likely to be a computer. Moving on, we're going to look at some basic I/O interfaces, or input and output, which I/O stands for, obviously. Looking at the top left, we have the PS2, which stands for Personal System 2. It's commonly referred to as the mouse or keyboard port. Now, this is the port that were used to connect a keyboard and or a mouse to a PC before pretty much every accessory went over to USB. Now, USB you're probably already familiar with, so we're not gonna go that deep into that jungle. Top third and fifth column is network interfaces, which is a standard RJ45 connector, and in between them is the DVI port. Now this is the monitor port for those of you who've never seen a DVI port before. But in the good old days, a computer monitor used VGA. Now VGA is an analog interface. This was later supplemented with DVI interface, which is a digital interface, and later on HDMI and DisplayPort, which are the most common ones in this day of age. If there's something you'd like me to make a future video about, leave a comment down below, and if you found this information helpful, or if you at least found that you learned something, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. And if you didn't like this video, try playing it in half the speed and see if it makes it better or worse. Until next time, have a good one.